Hello everybody, this is Garth Cahoon Speaks back here with another video. I'd like you to hit the subscribe bar, give me a thumbs up if you like the video, or hit the notification bell to be notified when I post my next post, or otherwise you can donate to my ministry and the charities that I support at garthcahoon3@gmail.com on PayPal. Disconnected from the facts and reality. The United Nations places Israel on sexual violence blacklist alongside Hamas and ISIS. Israel freezes ties with the UN Secretary General's office in response. The United Nations has placed Israel on a blacklist of entities engaging in sexual violence in conflict zones. Israel's ambassador to the United Nations, Danny Danone, announced on Thursday morning. The United Nations has added Israel to the blacklist of sexual violence in conflict zones, alongside the world's most brutal terrorist organisations, Hamas and ISIS, Danone posted on X. Danone called the decision a political decision, disconnected from the facts and reality. He also noted that Israel provided the UN with evidence to refute the claim of sexual violence and had invited UN representatives to conduct an examination. This is a political decision disconnected from the facts and reality, Danone said, noting that Israel provided evidence, documents and detailed answers to every claim. We invited UN representatives to come to the field and examine things closely, and of course they chose not to do so. When facts do not fit the narrative, the United Nations simply changes the narrative, Danone said. We will continue to stand for the truth and expose the blood libels on every possible platform. The truth will prevail. The United Nations blacklist on sexual violence in conflict zones is an international tool in the fight against war crimes. The list, published annually as part of the Secretary General's report, includes countries, national armies and organisations accused of using rape and sexual violence as a systematic and deliberate tool to achieve military or political aims. Entities added to the list remain on it for at least 1 year. Last year, the United Nations added Hamas to the list 2 years after the October 7th massacre in southern Israel and the atrocities committed by the terrorists. The inclusion of Hamas was originally opposed by the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres. In response, the Israeli Foreign Ministry stated at the time Hamas inclusion constitutes an international seal of guilt for a particularly serious offence under international law, on the same level as war crimes and crimes against humanity. According to Ynet News, one of the Israeli bodies included in the list is the Israeli Prison Service, along with other Israel authorities, reportedly in connection with allegations related to the Stay Teeman case, which were later dropped. Israel authorities believe that heavy pressure was placed on Guterres following Hamas's inclusion on the list. Ynet reported that several meetings were held between Danone's team and Guterres representatives and her team over the last year. Israel provided documents, data and a detailed response to the allegations of sexual abuse raised in the reports and drafts sent to Jerusalem. It also invited the Guterres staff to visit and investigate the claims. However, despite the information and explanations provided, Guterres decided to include Israel on the list. At the same time, Danone told Ynet that Israel will freeze relations with the Guterres and will cancel a planned visit to Israel by Pramila Patten, the UN representative on sexual violence and conflict. Israel informed the United Nations that it will not maintain contacts with the Secretary General's office while Antonio Guterres remains in office. This announcement comes after the publication of an opinion column in the New York Times, which also accused Israel of sexual violence against Palestinian prisoners. Israel has threatened to file a defamation lawsuit against the newspaper. The announcement also comes after the release of a report documenting Hamas' use of sexual violence during the October 7th attacks, based on testimony from hundreds of witnesses, along with forensic evidence collected by the military, police, and first responders. Ambassador Danone told Ynet anyone who is capable of including Israel on the same list as Hamas terrorists and rapists has no more right to ask to be involved. Antonio Guterres, who justified the October 7th massacre, whitewashed the involvement of the United Nations employees in the massacre and led the organisation to an unprecedented low, is using the last month of his term to advance political and false accusations against Israel. Danone said, in the light of this conduct, Israel has decided to freeze its relations with the Office of the UN Secretary General and will wait for a professional and decent Secretary General to take office. And they're so right. That New York Times piece was a hit piece. They only done it because they knew that Israel was coming out with their investigation into the sexual violence of Hamas on October 7th. They did this because they couldn't let Israel have their day. The New York Times actually said that Israel used dogs to rape Palestinian prisoners, which is an impossibility. Shalom, Maranatha.